table and somewhat around as the House Education Committee members of both Republican and Democrat Party. Tonight, we have an hour allotted for this public hearing. It will start from the minute Denise begins her speech. You have 2 minutes to speak. I will cut you off at 2 minutes. I will not allow the heckler's veto to take place tonight. So if we cannot be heard in this room, I will pause the hearing. I will not add additional minutes at the end, and I will ensure the person that was speaking will get to speak for their full 2 minutes. That is at the discretion of the chair. So we want to make sure when we're in here that we can hear everybody. I can talk loud into the mic, but some people are a little bit quieter. If you cannot hear the person speaking, you need to let me know, okay? Whether you give me a baseball hand signal or something like that, okay? I need to know, and then we will address it. We will have pro and con go, and we'll go back and forth until the time is done. At this time, we will go ahead and start. We'll finish at 6:01. Denise, floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you, representatives, for hosting this public hearing, and I appreciate each and every one of you, state representatives, for all you do. My name is Denise Bubeck. I'm of the Church Ambassador Network, and we stand in support of HF 2389 with some possible amendments and clarifications. We are very thankful to have Governor Reynolds bring this bill forward. Iowa will join other states who are leading for women. It is legislation based on biological truth. Actually, none of us would be here today if it wasn't for biology. God created woman and man, period. As a grandmother of a beautiful granddaughter, I want her to grow up in a world where she is clearly defined and protected by her biological sex. So today is the day to codify biology. Right now, females are losing safe spaces while biological men are gaining access into sororities, women prisons, domestic violence shelters, and rape centers. Women and girls who speak truth on biological differences of male and female are getting silenced and canceled. This must stop. This bill does not curb the rights of others. It simply makes the law recognize the biological differences between the sexes and protects their rights. Thank you for bringing this bill forward so that women will continue to enjoy the freedoms they have, and they will for generations to come. And today, thank you for with all of this noise that we hear. I am sometimes disappointed by that, disappointed that we cannot maintain a civil discourse. So thank you, Chairman Wheeler, for talking about that today.
Thank you. Next. Hold on, just for the record, when you guys come, whoever's seated, just stay there when you speak, and we'll just have the next person fill the next seat. And when you're speaking, get up on there tight.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Max Mowitz with One Iowa, and I am in opposition to this bill. The first thing I want to say is that I am here as a proud Iowan. I believe that we all have that in common. I am here because I love this state, and I am here because I want a better future for all Iowans. It cannot be stressed enough that this bill will impact domestic violence and sexual assault services for Iowans. I've been engaged in sexual assault and domestic violence work for years and am a survivor myself. I have seen firsthand the ways that trans people, especially Black trans women, are disproportionately impacted by violence. This legislation will cost us precious lives because it creates the possibility that all of the domestic violence organizations may lose some of the little funding that they do have. I've worked with these organizations and heard the issues they're facing. Loss of funding should not be added to the list. Also, loss of funding for domestic violence programs actively harms the very women you purport to be protecting. It harms all women, regardless of if you see them as such. This bill will also harm many LGBTQ Iowa families. People that I love are raising children here and making our state better. I am watching their babies grow up. I refuse to think of these families simply as a workforce that we desperately need to keep. These are workers, yes, but they are community members and volunteers and people that you could call if you need a meal. These people are the reason that Iowa is beautiful to me. I know that this legislation will scare many LGBTQ folks and they will leave, but I cannot bring myself to do the same. I remember in high school when we added gender identity to the Civil Rights Bill and when we were third in the nation to get same-sex marriage. I remember that because that was when I knew that I had a future here in Iowa. Being an Iowan is just as important to me as being trans. This is my state too. Every time I come to this Capitol, I am reminded of how much I love a state that does not love me back. I want people to live here, raise their families here, and make this state better. I hope you do too. Please do not move forward with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Steve Dace, and I am here to express my support for the bill. You will hear a lot of opinions here in the next hour. In opposition to this bill, you will hear no facts. There are no facts in opposition to this, because what we're being asked to do is to deny the most basic fact of human biology, the first fact that was stated about every single person in this room. No one ever was announced to the world as a non-binary construct. The first thing said about every single person in this room is it's a boy, it's a girl. It is the most basic fact of existence. The reason why the other side's arguments sound like the insanity going on out in the rotunda is because literally what they are arguing for is insanity. What we're being asked to do is ignore reality, to redefine reality. We are not permitted to redefine reality. The worst mistakes made in human history occur when we attempt to. Every single atrocity had its basis in we get to redefine reality. There is as much basis of fact in what you're being asked to oppose as there would be for wearing a mask to stop an airborne contagion of a respiratory virus, which is to say none. And that is why there needs to be intimidation, and there needs to be shouting, and there can't be facts, and there can't be reason, and there can't be science, because there is none to support the opposition to what you are doing. All you are doing is affirming the most and first basic fact of human existence. We are all created either male or female. That's it, period, end of sentence. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Alexandra St. James Gray, and I am a proud Iowan. I am also an out, open, trans woman. And I know that people here are going to discuss facts and or science. So I'm going to put my personal business out there for you. When I decided to transition and I went to my doctor's office, my doctor told me that at the age that I started, that I had the estrogen levels of an 18-year-old woman, since everyone wants to discuss science. Now, I'd like to ask the body, what dystopian novel are we in this time? I'd like to know where we're going in history, because I'm finding us slipping and going backward. At one point in time, people of color, Black people were declared 3/5 of a person. I'd like to know what percentage of a person queer people are going to get so that I can base my life around it. You'll see a lot of people walking in with the pink triangle. I'm not sure if you're aware what that symbol is. It's the symbol that gays and lesbians and trans people were made to wear during World War II when Hitler sent people to concentration camps. So I live at the intersection of Black and queer. I need to ask you, where are you sending me? To a concentration camp or back to a plantation? Again, I need to figure out where I'm going in my life. I oppose this bill because it will destroy people. It will place people in a line of fire. It will destruct people. This bill is literally playing with lives. And understand that you all aren't making laws for yourselves. You are making laws for generations to come. No, I'm not here trying to take any woman's place. And I do understand exactly who I am, but I made choices and decisions for myself that kept me here. The choices that I made for myself kept me alive. I'm a suicide survivor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good evening, everyone.
Hold on, Jordan. Hold on. Okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Please turn your mic off. Jordan, you gotta hit the little guy. There's a little human on the right.
No, yours is on. I'm good. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak in favor of this bill. I have swam and played water polo competitively my entire life, and I, like all other girls and women, deserve the right to feel safe in our locker rooms and restrooms and everywhere else. I'm speaking on behalf of all the girls and women who should be here and would be here, but fear being labeled as transphobic or hateful or any of the other words going around. Right now, if I were to share a concern about a man in my locker room or bathroom, I would be met with backlash. That is what is happening to girls and women everywhere. Girls and women are being assaulted in locker rooms and restrooms all over this country, and many of us are being traumatized, catching men staring at us while changing. Enough is enough. I will not back down to the loud and hateful minority and urge everybody to speak out. Women fought for years for equal rights, and I feel like all the hard work goes out the door when we allow men into women's spaces. This bill will protect girls and women across Iowa. My rights do not end where someone else's feelings begin. Please pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Brianna Young. I'm an attorney who has spent the last 20 years parsing legislation in my legal practice. The language of House File 2389 is vague, confusing, and it will lead to unintended consequences. Section 1 defines female as a person whose biological reproductive system is developed to produce ova. Many women have conditions where their reproductive systems are not developed to produce ova. Take the 8 to 13% of women with polycystic ovary syndrome. Endometriosis is another example. There are several. Their reproductive systems will never develop ova. So if you're a person with PCOS, this bill specifically erases you. You are not a woman anymore under this bill. And since the bill limits the definition of mother to a parent who is female, then legally you're not a mother anymore either. Section 2 provides that a new birth certificate must include the designation of male or female at birth. Who gets to decide? Is it the doctor? How does the doctor know when the baby's born what the reproductive system is designed to do? Do they base this on the newborn's genitalia? Apparently not. Section 1 tells us that you need to base it on the internal anatomy. And why does it matter what a 50-year-old man's genitalia looked like at the time he was born anyway? What is the state interest in that? This bill is so vague, its sponsor doesn't even know what it means. Section 1 says separate accommodations are not inherently equal. When asked what equal does mean, Representative Hora answered, equal would mean, I assume that equal would mean I don't know exactly in this context. When the bill's sponsor cannot tell you the purpose of the bill or what the bill means, that is a problem. I know the intention of this bill is to target transgender siblings, children, other Iowans. But believe me when I tell you, there will be unintended consequences unless you vote no today.
Thank you. We're going to hold off because that gets loud. And we're going to hold off until that stops too. Madam Chief Clerk, this is their warning. If they continue to cheer and chant while supporters or the pro individuals are speaking, we will just sit here. Thank you. All right, floor is yours.
Thank you for allowing us to speak today. My name is Jody Jacqueline, and I am speaking in favor of this bill. I want to talk simply and straight to the point. Since 2021, we have been informed to trust the science. So we should not be picking and choosing what science to trust. It is a proven scientific fact that XX chromosome is for the female and XY is male. Therefore, I fully support this bill.
Thank you. We'll also hold off until she clears the room as well. Floor is yours.
My name is Caleb Elkinsalver, and I am in opposition of this bill. I actually wrote this at 2 a.m. in the morning, right after sucking the boogers out of my 6-month nose and offering her Tylenol because she's teething. hearing her cry due to her discomfort because it feels outside of her control. Some of you may know what that feels like, to the long nights and the days to care for your child. I remember being so excited for these days as my wife and I navigated through the scariest parts of pregnancy. Again, some of you know what that feels like. But can you imagine what it feels like to go through all of that, to see your child grow, to love you as much as you love them, and have to look them in the eyes and tell them that people who could use their power for so much good would rather choose the destruction and delegitimization of families? In this bill, you say the term equal does not mean same or value. So I ask, these changes being implemented, are they actually to help your constituents combat the very pervasive experiences of inequality, such as housing, discrimination, job security, violence to self or others, to make the world more equitable, fair, and therefore just? Or are these changes recommended because you devalue the lives of trans and queer people and parents? I'd hope that I wouldn't have to look you in the eye, then also my daughter, and to tell her that the state that was once ahead of the game in creating equality and justice has leaders to use their power to devalue and delegitimize in creating law and writing, loving families that wipe the same boogers in comfort, the same teething children as you. I hope I can share with my daughter, who has two mothers, that we have legislators that care about every single family and want to create a world where people belong. Or would you rather tell my child, or have me tell my child, that our politicians could care less about her? Vote no today.
We'll hold off until she clears as well. Sir, would you turn your mic off there? Thank you. Floor is yours.
I'm Amber Williams. I'm a mother and I'm a supporter of this bill. Let me start off by saying that this bill defines our most basic truth that even our children understand. I'll give you an example. In 1990, the movie Kindergarten Cop was released. One of the most famous lines was said by a 6-year-old. Boys have a penis and girls have a vagina. A simple matter-of-fact statement of two sexes articulated by a child. Today, that truth is being twisted by a gender ideology experiment promoted to our children. Children have become victims of disturbing and irresponsible treatments as misguided adults impose a confused ideology on the most innocent and vulnerable. In 2021, roughly 42,000 minors across the US were diagnosed with gender dysphoria, nearly triple the number in 2017. We have to ask why. We know gender ideology has been working its way into public schools for years, in both curriculum and extracurricular activities. On a parallel track, kids have been overstimulated with gender ideology propaganda through social media influencers. This indoctrination has fueled identity confusion and has created a crisis that ignores that two sexes are meant by divine design to be different and complementary, each having equal dignity and made in the image of God. This bill passage is urgent as new gender ideologies emerge. The lies being told will impact all children that are developing a self-understanding as a boy or a girl, man or a woman, a potential husband or wife, father or mother, a structure that our society was built on and thrives on. I ask you to protect our children by passing this bill, especially our girls. We as women should not have to share our safe spaces with a man, period, ever. This not only violates our privacy, but also places our safety at risk. And equally important to stop the current efforts to redefine sex to include gender identity, a movement to dissolve sex as a stable legal category. These attempts would create legal chaos, and that is not a world that can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Matthew McIver. I'm from Des Moines. Even in just the bit I've been in here, I've heard a great deal of misinformation. Others can tell you about the risk this bill may pose to trans folks or the damage this may do to Iowa families. I am the father of LGBTQ youth, and I'm here to tell you why it's bad policy. Iowa needs to attract and retain talent. 2/3 of Iowa County's lost population in the last year, for which I'm aware that there are numbers. We have gained national and international attention for an attempt to enshrine the debunked, discredited, and disgraced language of Plessy versus Ferguson in Iowa law. Separate is not equal in the United States, and it hasn't been since Brown v. Board. I am an Iowan by choice. I moved my pregnant wife here in 2008 to found an organization called the Des Moines Social Club. Months later, the Varnum decision came down, and One Iowa held its celebration at that club. It was a beautiful day. I would not advise people I love to move to Iowa today. Iowa businesses compete not just regionally, not just with our neighbor states, but nationally and internationally for talent. Overreach like this, that is legislating things that government should stay out of, makes it harder for our businesses to attract people to live, work, and play in Iowa. Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain only if we maintain the rights of all Iowans. Otherwise, even if you don't care about this particular group of vulnerable Iowans, government overreach in future administrations and legislatures may come for people that you do care about. I would urge you to protect the rights of all Iowans, to take on projects that benefit all Iowans, such as stopping the slide in our public education, supporting our infrastructure, and giving local control where local decisions and accountability can reside. End the divisive copycats of other states' failed policies, and protect the rights of all Iowans and our competitiveness on the world stage. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Laura Becker, and I'm here today because I was harmed by the lie that biological sex doesn't matter. When I was a child, I was a tomboy, having a hard time fitting in and struggling with depression and anxiety. I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum and experienced chronic psychological and emotional abuse from a parent. These issues destroyed my self-esteem and led to constant rumination about self-harm and suicide. In
Hold
high
on,
school,
Laura. All right, floor is yours.
In high school, I learned about being transgender online and in my school's LGBT club. Gender and queer ideology told me that some people's identities, in essence, their gender souls, don't match their biological sex. Because of the trauma I was suffering, I desperately wanted to escape the pain in my body and become my highest self. It felt like a liberation that my biological sex didn't matter and that I could be free from the constraints of stereotypical social norms. Despite being suicidal, I was medically affirmed as a male, prescribed testosterone to inject weekly into my thigh, and approved to have my healthy breasts removed, being told that it was medically necessary to validate my confused identity. Regretfully, none of the gender transition procedures helped my mental health. In fact, I was soon diagnosed as having even more PTSD from living in the delusion that I could change my biological sex. I share my story because in Iowa, we have the opportunity to prevent trauma like I went through by admitting that biological sex is real and that having negative feelings about one's body doesn't mean that nature can be changed. I've learned through the bitter pill of trauma that lying about gender identity damages our most vulnerable and that children and adults should be safeguarded from experiencing a tragedy like mine by passing informed laws that are based in science and not a misguided spiritual and ideological belief. Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Annie Sarcone, and I am the director of the Queer Youth Resource Center, as well as a member of the trans community, which I am very proud of, and I am a very happy living trans person here in Iowa. I am asking you to vote no on this bill. I've sat in quite a few of these meetings and watched as bills have been moved forward with no data to back them up. I've watched as our state continues its hateful attack on the LGBTQ+ and trans community. I am confused and frustrated why we are here discussing the concept of separate but equal and how our governor believes this bill is constitutional when we all know separate but equal is inherently unconstitutional. This bill is nothing more than retaliation from our governor as a way to make up for the fact that HF 2082 didn't pass, as well as her AEA bill failing. And I'd like to speak on that. Some of you made the decision not to pass that. Why? Because you didn't feel the information given was enough and you knew it would do harm. You knew that people would be directly affected and you listened to the people that would be directly affected. Are you listening to us? Are you listening to them out there? Do you actually have the accurate information to pass this through on good conscience? At the end of the day, what is the value besides harming 0.029% of Iowa's state population? I am asking you to vote no on this bill. I'm asking you to look at me, a human being, someone who gives back to their community, who loves living in Iowa. Look at me and tell me my rights should be separate from others, that a designator marker on my birth certificate is necessary, that my community deserves this harm that is being caused. Then look at yourselves. Will you be able to answer to the God you preach about? To invoke my Catholic upbringing, Isaiah 56:3-5 states, "For thus says the Lord, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who choose the things that please me and hold fast my covenant, I will give in my house and within my walls a monument and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that should not be cut off. He has given me this life, not you, and you won't succeed in taking it away." Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
My name's Todd Erzen. I could have sworn we solved all this 2 years ago when my daughter brought 50 of her friends down here to save girls' sports. Because at the first subcommittee meeting, and there's not a person in this room and there's not a person out there who doesn't know what a woman is. Because when they got here and they saw the optics of what a real woman looks like, they went and caucused the Democrats for 3 hours to make those girls go away. It was game over. We all know what a woman is. 1 + 1 = 2. But they've got a different math to teach. We send our kids to school thinking they're going to get an education. They fertilize and water them with pornography, with pronouns, with social emotional learning. And that's how we get all this tolerance and diversity out there. There was just a meta study last week released. No matter how much we butcher their bodies with surgery, they're still just as depressed. They're just still as prone to suicide when they get out of there. And here's a fun fact. Recently, Colorado Springs shooter, non-binary, Nashville school shooter, trans, Aberdeen shooter, trans, Denver school shooter, trans, Iowa school shooter, trans, Lakewood church shooter, trans, yet here they still are. They will not pump the brakes. Coast to coast, Maine, California, I believe Washington. If you don't agree with this, though, they're promising you they're going to come into your house and take your kids. Might I suggest that we're not talking about tolerance and diversity anymore with this stuff? If they're promising to take your kids when they're going insane, if the grown men are coming into your girls' bathrooms, might I suggest we're dealing with domestic terrorism? They can chant all they want. A couple days ago, we will not go silently. We've come to that moment, all right? Think about my daughter and the 50 girls who came down there and put it on the line. Think of them, continue what they started. Because whether they go silently or not, we're not the East Coast. They need to go. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to turn your mic off, or do you want to hit that? Thank you. Floor is yours.
My name is Shay Daniels. I am a proud American and Iowan. I was a National Merit Scholar in Marion. I learned about leadership from Air Force ROTC in Ames, and I have a degree in computer science from Iowa State. I live, love, volunteer, and mentor here in Des Moines. I contribute to Iowa's technology economy and I pay taxes. If you ask Governor Reynolds, too much in taxes. I also happen to be transgender. As divisive as discussions like these can be, I know we're all here to build the best Iowa that we can. We believe in the promise of America. Our state motto lights the way, but the way forward is still hard. Reasonable people can disagree when rights appear to be in conflict, and that's okay. I also know that it's hard to understand what it's like to be transgender, and that's okay too. We can get by if we listen to each other as Iowans, and Iowans are not the majority asking for this bill. The Iowans I talk to want an inclusive state that attracts the best people we can find regardless of their identity. When I came out, they accepted me despite their political party or religious beliefs. And the women around me were the ones that told me that they felt safe with me, that it was ridiculous that I had planned to go 18 floors down to use a gender-neutral bathroom at work. They told me that I was part of the sisterhood. That remains my highest honor. I know in my brain and in my heart that I'm a woman. Medical science recognizes this fact. I'm not delusional. I'm not a threat to other women. My identity is not a mental illness. It is not something that can be erased from me through therapy or legislated away, or even beaten out of me from being forced to use the wrong facilities. It's integral to who I am. I'm not ignoring biology. I'm accepting it. Everything we've learned tells us that sex and gender is a rich tapestry that is more complicated than a few sentences in black and white on a bill. We simply don't need this legislation. It's inaccurate, reductive, and does not improve the lives of Iowans. There are better ways to achieve the promise of the safe and prosperous Iowa that we all want. For this reason, as a citizen of this state and as someone who would be erased and endangered by this bill, I must ask you to vote against it. Please help me stay in the state that I love. Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
My name's Shelley Flockhart, and I'm here as a woman. I do love this bill. We need to keep both men and women safe. We need separate bathrooms, including single ones when needed. This bill will keep women, teens, children safe in bathrooms, locker rooms, and dressing rooms in stores. We also need women's groups, such as domestic abuse groups, to remain a safe space. I needed a group to be with biological women only years ago. It was about 25 years ago, and I was a victim of domestic abuse. We need women's sports to remain for women only.
Shelley, hold on.
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Okay, we need women's sports to remain for women only. Just this morning, I was at CrossFit. We have women's prescribed weights and men's prescribed weights. It's listed every single day that way. And as a woman, I will never lift what a man can. This is another space where there needs to be a defined separation. We don't want to go backward. Women's rights movement was one thing, but extreme feminism has gone so far as to invite biological males in spaces and replace women with them. Again, erasing women. We also need to keep men safe. The Me Too movement was just a couple years ago. Keeping men safe from dangers and accusations in locker rooms or restrooms is important as well. We are for women. We are women or men, girls or boys. Confusion of gender.
Shelley, hold on. For the purpose of this body, we did not call this public hearing to hear one side. So when one side is speaking, we're dead silent out there. When another side is speaking, we're not. We have people in here that are hard of hearing. We have people in here, especially in this corner, that cannot hear these speeches. So Shelley, I'm going to give you your time back, and we're going to hold off until that stops. I know if you're over here, you can probably hear it fine. But as I said earlier, we're not going to have a heckler's veto. I've had texts come in. I've seen different faces and different things. We have to be able to hear people, even if we disagree with them. So for this time, we're going to hold off a second, and Shelley, I would like you to start over when we get back to that.
Completely over?
Your call.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
All right, I'm going to start partway through. We don't want to go backward. Women's rights movement was one thing, but extreme feminism has gone so far as to invite biological males in and place them at the top instead of women, again, erasing women. We also need to keep men safe. The Me Too movement was only a few years ago. Keeping men safe from dangers or accusations in a locker room or restroom is important for men too. Lastly, there was a group here last week trying to silence me and us by screaming over what we were trying to say during the time we spoke. That's what happened to women years ago, or, men too. We have the right to have a voice as well. Now there are biological men wanting to take it away again. Thank you for this bill. Thank you for the truth, and thank you for keeping us safe.
Okay. I think we're good. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am Amy Wickendahl. I am an Iowan. I am a trans woman. I am a member of the Hiawatha City Council, and I rise in fierce opposition to this bill, as all Americans should. No one should have to come to the Capitol week after week after week to basically protest for their basic human rights. And make no mistake, this bill is a repeal of civil rights. It is a full frontal assault on the Civil Rights Act. It is the first effort by a state government to reinstitute separate but equal since the 1960s. And it is the most brazen effort by our governor to erase trans and queer people from Iowa. I rise in fierce opposition to this bill and demand the government start telling the truth, because in the 17 years since gender identity was added to the Civil Rights Act, there has not been one instance of a trans person gaining access to women's spaces or men pretending to be trans in order to harass and assault women. I would ask that our governor stop gaslighting Iowans, because she would admit that she is harming women and attacking their rights. She has deprived women of this state to their right to their bodily autonomy by seeking a ban on abortion. Such actions make pregnancy much more dangerous, deprives this state of OBGYN providers, and creates maternity health care deserts. I rise in fierce opposition to this bill to speak for the hundreds of trans and queer people throughout the state who cannot be here today. We are tired of having to see queer youth afraid to go to school because this government has made it a hostile place. We are tired of having to watch our friends and family move out of state because the place they call home is no longer safe. And we are tired of being targets of conniving politicians who attack our humanity, slander our dignity, just to score cheap political points and fundraise it off of their failure of governance. Queer and trans people have had enough. We are human beings. We are American citizens. We are Iowans, and we do not deserve the abuse we're getting from our government. We rise in united opposition to this bill. It is an affront to our values and the words written on our flag, our liberties we prize, and our rights we will maintain. Reject this bill.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Courtney Collier. I'm here in support of this bill. The most supreme and loving being in the universe, Almighty and Sovereign God, created each of us in this room today. He created us male and female with order, purpose, and truthful design for life. The author of confusion, deception, and death, Satan the devil, deceives people into believing lies about who they are, resulting in their suffering. Isaiah 5:20-21 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight." That's what we are here to discuss today, telling each other the truth. The idea that some, believing they are wise in their own eyes, are attempting to change the meaning of words. This legislation is simple truth. It's based on common sense and basic biology. You cannot arbitrarily change the meaning of a word to suit your personal agenda or belief. People can, however, choose to live delusion or confusion in their own life and home, but the rest of us should not be forced to join them. I am a woman, an adult female human. I am also a mother. I have ovaries and a uterus that for 9 months developed 3 humans and birthed them out of my vagina after laboring for hours. No man, a person with a penis and testicles who changes their pronouns, name, or takes hormone blockers and puts on makeup and women's clothing can do that. It is truly ridiculous that we need to codify the definitions in this bill and legislate to keep humans with penises and testicles, also known as boys and men, out of our designated for women spaces. However, here we are, because the privacy and safety of girls and women are being disregarded and threatened. Biological females are being erased and replaced by this nonsensical social engineering trend, which is orchestrated by the devil himself. Please pass this bill to protect the actual biological girls, women, and mothers in Iowa. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're not changing. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Keenan Crowe, One Iowa. There are a million things to say about this legislation, but unfortunately, I can't say any of them with absolute clarity because this legislation is not written for Iowa. It is national legislation ported to Iowa without any regard to existing Iowa law. And what that means is, as previous speakers have mentioned, we are looking at a nearly innumerable number of unintended consequences in our future. Now, there may be those of you in this room or watching at home who think that this is a very simple bill. Indeed, we have heard legislators say this over and over again. But I will warn you right now that the statutory construction section of the code is a very dangerous area of code to mess around in. These are definitions that will apply and indeed override definitions in other statutes that already exist. The word mother itself is mentioned 325 times in Iowa code. Are you confident? Have you gone through each of these statutes to ensure that you haven't created any unintended consequences there? Because I'm not. What about adoptive mothers whose biological systems ultimately didn't develop to produce ova because of a condition like PCOS? Do they no longer deserve the same legal protections and processes simply because they don't meet the narrowly constructed definition? Because that is ultimately what is going to happen. You will pass this and tell yourselves that it's all very simple, and then Iowans will suffer for something that sounds good, but ultimately does not work. The fact of the matter is this is not a simple bill. It's an incredibly complex bill, and the way it shoehorns itself into Iowa code makes it even more difficult to understand what will ultimately happen. It may make for good headlines and good postcards, but it does not make for good law. So I'll leave you with this. If this is indeed a woman's Bill of Rights, why is the League of Women Voters registered against it? And if this is supposed to protect women in rape crisis and domestic violence shelters, why are the organizations who are the experts in this field registered against it as well? It's because the bill doesn't do anything that it purports to do, and it certainly does not protect women. Thank you.
My name's Josh Briggs.
Hold on.
Oops, sorry.
Floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. My name's Josh Briggs. I'm not with an organization. I am talking in support of this bill. When I'm getting to know somebody, at some point in the conversation, it inevitably turns towards family. I'll get asked, do you have any kids? To which I respond, yes. My wife and I have 4 little kids. They'll respond, how many? And I'll say 4, and they'll ask, the next question will be, boys or girls? And I'll say, I have 4 girls. Without question, every time I say that to somebody, their mouth widens a little bit and their eyes open and they're like, wow, 4 girls. You're going to have fun teenage years. Without question, no matter who it is. Why do they do that? Because there is a distinct difference that everybody in this room knows between boys and girls. It's the universal understanding of that uniqueness. Of course, I'll have the rare opportunity where I'll meet somebody with 3 or 4 girls and their response is always, you better have enough towels. And if you have a lot of girls like me, you'll understand that there are never clean towels in our house. I find it ridiculous that we're sitting here having this conversation, yet here we are because our society is so painfully fragmented, And like the schoolyard bully that forces someone to participate or stay quiet, the activists outside of this room have forced the need for this legislation through their totalitarian tactics, much as they've done throughout academia and research, especially in the field of social sciences. It does not take a biologist to understand that males and females are different, not just in sexual organs, but size, shape, respiratory systems, skin, hair, nervous system, brain, sensory, and immune systems, tissues. The science is extremely clear and quite deep. Females have XX chromosomes and create eggs. Males have XY and create sperm. And when you put the two together, you maintain the human species by creating life. In fact, if you look at etymology of the word gender, it starts with gen, or the Greek word genus, which means that which produces, and der, which is short for derivation or derivative, the process for creating. So the basis of gender in all actuality is about creating life. At the end of the day—
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your committee. My name is Wendy Abrahamson, and I'm an Episcopal priest, and I represent the Episcopal Diocese of Iowa. We are declared in opposition to this bill, and I have a statement from our bishop, the Right Reverend Betsy Monnett, explaining the theology and spirituality of why we stand where we do. I comment as the bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Iowa, a faith leader in this state. I oppose this bill in no uncertain terms. This legislation is an unscientific and inhumane attempt to punish transgender, intersex, and gender non-binary people for wanting to live the lives that God created them to live. Every human being is created in the image of God and deserves to be treated with the dignity and respect that is due to God's image. This law would create a second class of humanity and even acknowledges that in the statement on line 16, separate accommodations are not inherently unequal, which would be unnecessary to include in the law if it were actually true. History and settled law tells us that there is no such thing as separate but equal, and it is astonishing that this legislation would attempt to change that. This law also lacks any background in the current scientific understanding of gender, gender identity, and gender expression, which shows us that there's no true binary in biological sex, despite the attempt this law makes to define it that way. As a Christian leader, I urge you to defeat this legislation in the name of the God who created all humanity and loves each individual uniquely, including our transgender, intersex, and non-binary siblings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Hold on. They're going to do a switch.
Good.
Floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me. Kelly Koch, Bachelor of Science degree, University of Iowa College of Nursing, Master of Science degree, Rush University, Chicago, former director of the Mercy Heart and Kidney Organ
Kelly.
Transplant Program.
All right, Kelly, I know you really, really want to speak, and I know we got others, so get really loud into the mic.
Thank you. I want to take you inside of a issue, and I mean literally. Former director of the organ transplant programs at Mercy Hospital, inside a body cavity. Hearts, kidney, lung, liver, pancreas, skin, eyes. The transplant centers across the country must match organs to viable and needy patients. So if you take a transgender situation where a male wants to be a female, you remove the penis, testicles, you implant breasts, you give hormone IV orally over a period of time, and they come back to a medical center and are tested for a transplant, their chromosomes do not change. It's female and male. You can do any sort of anatomical surgery as well as cosmetic. Their bone shape is different. The pelvic canal is different. Their brain size is different. Mandible, dentition, and even organ cavity. Pancreas, liver, hearts are usually larger for male, although training as an athlete, you can compensate that. So no matter what happens to a patient, and the extreme is an organ transplant, they'll come back to the medical centers worldwide and do a chromosomal panel, and there still is XX and XY, and that cannot be changed. One woman and one man, and that's all the genders that there are. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Barry Stevens. I'm 13 years old and my pronouns are they, them. As a gender fluid teenager, this law attempts to write me out of existence. By twisting the meanings of gender and sex into one concept, you're intentionally hurting me, my friends, and my family. Boo-hoo for you, though. I am not and I will not go away. Because you seem to need a reminder, gender is how we present ourselves to the world, and sex is based on anatomical, genetic, and chromosomal details. You can know my gender based on how I present and introduce myself. However, you can't know my sex without access to my medical records, genetic testing, or you being a creep. You could be solving real problems, but instead you've been hyper-fixated on gender and sex, not keeping anyone safer, but actively endangering LGBTQ Iowans. I deserve to thrive here, not just survive. I'm counting on you to do your job and protect all the people of Iowa. Vote no and tell your colleagues to do the same.
Thank you. Can you state your name again for us?
Barry Stevens.
Thank you. you are the last two. The floor is yours. Talk loud into the mic. Get up close to it.
Thank you so much. My name is Geraldine Jones. I am from Lynn County. I'm a huge proponent to this bill. We hear today they feel like a woman, so that means they must transition. For some, this means to socially affirm through the use of pronouns, hormone therapy, and for others, this means surgically removing or constructing genitalia. This is harmful, damaging, and irreversible. When presented to a child as an option, as a way out of the normal awkward stage in everyone's life, who wouldn't take it? Children as young as 13 are making life decisions they will never be able to reverse, and they end up taking their life. But truthfully, their life was taken from the moment they joined the cult. To be a woman is not to just look like a woman or act like a woman. When you dress like a woman, aren't you stating how a woman dresses and acts? When you curl your hair, wear makeup, and put on nylons or wear a bra, you are stating that these are feminine characteristics that define a woman. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it must be a duck, right? Wrong. This does not apply to today's philosophy in defining what a woman is. A woman is an adult, human female. Though we are called complicated individuals, it really is simple to define our biological makeup. Let's talk about feelings. Does a male who identifies as a woman physically feel menstrual cramps or experience tender or painful breasts that happens at that time of year during their menstrual cycle or that time of month? Can that same male experience a cycle with a surgically constructed vagina? The answer is no. I find it insulting that we have legislators, school board members, and others in a position of authority that find it challenging to define what a female is. That's unacceptable. You're supposed to be standing in truth. Ask anybody who initially bought into this lie of transitioning their gender.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just stay here. We're going to have, don't have your name on there. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Representatives. My name is Becky Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of Iowa Safe Schools. We were founded in 2002 and serve LGBTQ students and their allies in all of Iowa's 99 counties. If the intent of this legislation was to showcase the governor's lack of knowledge on basic civil rights in this country, I applaud her very much. Brown versus Board of Education, for those of us that did graduate 8th grade civics, found that having separate but supposedly, quote, equal facilities was inherently unequitable and actually illegal. If the term equal does not mean same or identical, as this bill states, can anyone in this room championing this bill clarify for me what the term equal means? I guess I'm not quite sure what problem this bill is seeking to resolve. In attempting to define sex, the bill language actually ignores basic biology. It outright ignores our intersex Iowans that live here, people who are born with a combination of physically male and female reproductive organs, hormone patterns, biological patterns, etc. Which restrooms would the governor ask that these individuals use if this bill passes? These are all questions that I would welcome answers to. I think it's really important to remember that since 2007, we have had equal facility access for all Iowans. And in this time, not once has there been an accusation of criminal conduct due to this accommodation. Not in a restroom, not in a locker room, or in a school. If this is still a concern, I am happy to inform the folks in this hearing, as well as those watching online, that it is in fact already illegal for anyone to enter a facility with the intent to harass, harm, or invade the personal privacy of another Iowan. It's really a shame that we have to, thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody for coming out tonight. Shameful we weren't able to get through more, but that will conclude this public hearing. Thank you.
Today, we seize the day because at US Cellular, you can get an epic Samsung Galaxy S24 with Galaxy AI.
Even me?
Look under your chair. That's right.
Get the Samsung Galaxy S24 on us, US Cellular.
Today we got former Hawkeye running back LaShawn Daniels with us. We're going to break down what we heard from Tim Lester, LaShawn's thoughts on it, and fixing this Iowa offense. Plus, on the eve of the Super Bowl, we break it down all today. Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon. He's LaShawn Daniels, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. LaShawn, good to see you again here a day earlier than our normal Friday, but going to have a recap episode for tomorrow with the doubleheader of basketball on the horizon with Penn State on both the men's and the women's side. So thought we'd do this a day early and a little bit closer to what we heard from Tim Lester in the press conference earlier this week. Seth Wallace also named assistant head coach, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But good to see you, and on the eve here as we get ready right around the corner, Super Bowl 58. So a lot to talk about. How you doing?
Yeah, doing great. Excited to be on the pod again this week, and super encouraged by some of the things that I heard from Tim Lester and Coach Ferentz this week. So super excited to dive into that and talk about that a little bit.
Well, let's get right into it and talk about Tim Lester. We had our thoughts a week ago about it. For everyday listeners here of the podcast, I think they know my initial thoughts. I thought it was uninspiring, kind of a boring hire, more vanilla. Here we go. Kirk with his love of ice cream. There's a little more vanilla down your throat, and that's all we were going to get. And I started to warm up a little bit, the deeper you dive into it after you look back and really the details of, the Syracuse experience and how bad it was. Well, there were some major reasons for that. The time at Western Michigan, how it ended, and the deeper that I dove, the more excited I got. But then hearing him, I don't know if it was a complete 180 from where I was initially, but he won the press conference for me. I thought he was outstanding. He said the things that he needed to. Now that's just that. It's just talking. And until we see it on the field, that's a completely different aspect. But I really thought he knocked it out of the park. I think he talked to the fan base. You can tell he's been a guy as a former head coach that's done a lot of media. He was comfortable. There were some fun moments, some goofiness that's kind of in there too. Overall, I was really impressed after finally getting to hear from Tim Lester.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with all of that. I mean, he said a bunch of things that if you're just a fan of the Hawks, like things that you want to be able to hear. And he talked about, the ability of being able to create explosive plays, being efficient from the quarterback position, and as well as developing route combinations and route concepts based on how defenses play the offense. So like those are some things that we want to hear a lot of it, because again, over especially over the past few years offensively, we haven't been as explosive as we need to be. The passing game has been very, very uninspiring, to say the least. So to hear that coming in from your new OC, I think is super, super encouraging. But another thing that I personally really like is the fact that he talked about the run game and how being really, really good in the run game is what's going to help move the offense forward. And I know I touched on this a little bit last week, but the places that Tim Lester's coach, especially at his time at Western Michigan, when it came to their offense, running the football was a big part of what they did and what they did extremely well. And Tim Lester talked about that quite a bit, and he expanded on that and said the better that they're able to run the football, right, it opens up a lot more things in the passing game. It opens up a lot more opportunities for them to be able to do what you want to do. And the fact that they ran a bunch of 12 personnel at Western Michigan, and we've got the tight ends to run a bunch of 12 personnel here at Iowa, I think the marriage currently, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. And you kind of see why Coach Ferentz ended up choosing Tim Lester to be the OC, just because when you listen to him speak, you're like, okay, this is matching a lot of things that we like to hear typically from Coach Ferentz, and it also helps bring us into more of the year 2024 when it comes to offensive football. So I know, hey, it's early. You haven't even seen really what it's going to look like on the Iowa offense, right? We'll probably obviously get that first look and spring ball in about a month and a half. But for the most part, I think it's very, very encouraging to some of the things that we've heard from Tim Lester this week when it comes to bringing in his own style of offense and marrying it with what Iowa has done in the past and some of the things that Iowa does best.
You were involved early on, obviously Greg Davis coming in and taking over the coordinator. It was a rough start to things, but it certainly got very better. And you guys had some prolific offenses there, certainly for Iowa standards, certainly in 2014, 15. Those years were some really good numbers overall. But it took a while to get there. Does it feel like at least on the surface, that this marriage and this melding, coupled with a very veteran team and a very veteran offense, where you have an offensive line with 160 plus starts in their collegiate careers in your starting five. You have a quarterback that's played a lot of games. Now, injuries is a different conversation. A running back room that we talk about a ton. Tight ends. The question remains wide receiver. But being a veteran group like they are, and an offensive line that has a lot of starts there, does that make it, how much easier does that make it, I guess I should say, being able to do that and do that with a veteran group?
I think it makes it a lot easier. I mean, you think about those guys, they've played a lot of football. They've seen a lot of different things that defenses have thrown at them. Obviously, they've installed, their own offense a ton of times because you obviously always install new things every single year. And a bunch of these guys on offense, even though it hasn't been great, these guys have played football against some really, really good football teams. It's not like, coming in from when Davis took over, and it wasn't a very that first year wasn't great, and it wasn't like Iowa was in Big Ten title games at that point in time. Anyway, so like this team that you're coming in to take over now, right? It's been to a Big Ten title championship game multiple times over the past 2 years, and you've got a ton of experience on that offense with guys that have played a lot of snaps and have seen a lot of snaps. So I think when you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator who's trying to install a new system, I think having a lot of veteran guys that have been around a lot of football, that their football knowledge is just at a higher base than some of your younger players, it's going to make it that much easier to install an offense, because you can make similarities to maybe your previous system. You're going to start mirroring a little bit of the language, and things are going to be a lot more familiar for those veteran players to go ahead and to adjust to. Whereas if you've got a young team, you got guys that haven't played a ton of football, like it's already difficult enough to move on from your high school offense to a college offense, and then to go and switch that like a year after you've been in the system. It's definitely tough. But when you have guys that have played a lot of football, that are in their third, fourth, fifth years, even 6 years, right, at the and college football, it's going to make installing that system so much easier. And you don't necessarily have to hold your offense's hand, your players' hands, because again, they've seen a lot of football. They're going to be able to understand the concepts and the things that you're trying to do without making them all confused and having them play at a slower tempo than maybe they would if they were younger players. So
we heard not only from Tim Lester, we heard from Kirk Ferentz, some thoughts on that. Also from Seth Wallace, the new assistant head coach. We'll get LaShawn's take on that. Plus quarterback play. Cade McNamara, injuries aside, we certainly know the importance there. Iowa asks a lot of their quarterback. I want to talk to LaShawn a little bit about that, and perhaps simplifying the offense, what a step forward that can mean for the quarterback position at the University of Iowa. We'll do that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes.
Football gives you wings.
Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, it's all about getting that best spot on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. And tell you what, Super Bowl, there is so much to like in this game. The prop menu is immense. I'm taking a look at rushing totals. I'm taking a look at under interceptions for Patrick Mahomes in 17 playoff games, just 4 interceptions in his career. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, 2, 3, how about 30? Not only can you bet on who's going to win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which player is going to score a touchdown, scoring multiple touchdowns in the game, yardage totals, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Trent LaShawn back with you again on Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Your team every day. That's what we do here across the Locked On Network. LaShawn, starting with quarterback. And I don't know how many times, and really this is not just a Brian Ferentz thing or a Greg Davis thing or a Ken O'Keefe thing, has been during the 25 years of Kirk Ferentz. Well, it takes a long time to learn the offense, and certainly for the quarterback. Why does it take such a long time to figure out this offense? Why is it that it feels like you have to have a master class in order to do it? What makes certainly quarterback play and just overall the offense in the past so difficult to pick up right away?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of that is, so at Iowa, the quarterback is responsible for basically everything. So in addition to, getting the play calls in and whatnot, they also have to go up and they have to identify protection changes, identify who the Mike linebacker is on any given defensive formation that we're going against. Because the quarterback is the one that points it out. There's other teams where the line points it out. They make those decisions and whatnot. And so the quarterback can just focus on, the coverage they're seeing and whatnot. But when you add everything of all that piece of the puzzle, like it's just a lot to think about in, a 40-second play clock. I mean, you get the play in, you break the huddle at, 17, 15 seconds left on the play clock. You get up to the line of scrimmage, everyone gets lined up. Okay, you see how they're lined up initially. You make that protection changes if needed, or you identify like linebackers to where maybe the line is sliding or where we're working to in the run game, because they still do that in the run game as well. And then now you're okay, you check back up, you got the play clock, we're down to 3 seconds. Okay, we got to hurry up, we got to snap the ball and go from there. So right, it's just a lot to think about. Whereas, hey, you in other places, or if you run like an air raid offense, hey, you just run out there, you get lined up, line identifies who they're sliding to, and then you go ahead and you snap the ball and you're off and running. So when you add all that stuff on the quarterback's plate, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get accustomed to it. So I think that's some of the part that can make it a little bit more difficult, because again, when you add that piece into it, and now when you're calling a pass plays and you're telling your quarterbacks, hey, now you got to make sure that we're protecting the football. Hey, you haven't had the opportunity to get a good look at the defense, and you don't want to turn the ball over. You don't want to fumble it, because again, you don't want to get pulled out of the game or anything like that. So it can add a lot of stress to the offensive side of the ball. And when you're not running the football well, and you're stuck in those third and medium and third and long situations where the defensive line can obviously just tee off on the offensive line, and so that internal clock is ticking a lot faster, and now you're trying to get the ball out. It can make it an extremely difficult situation for quarterbacks. So I think that is part of it. And then I haven't even talked about the audibles and the checks that you have on plays. And when you add that piece into it, and you're always talking, and Coach Ferentz always talks about with quarterbacks, getting us in the right play, making sure that we don't take a bad play worse and things of that. Like it's just a lot to think about for the quarterbacks. And I feel like that's why it takes a ton of time for the quarterbacks at Iowa to really, really get up to speed, because they have to be able to do all of that. And then on top of that, Coach Ferentz has to trust them. I mean, at the end of the day, Coach Ferentz has to be the one to trust the guys that are out there, that he's going to go out there and he's going to execute as needed. That's why I know the past year for us was just so frustrating for fans just watching the offense, because it was just a bunch of stuff that we weren't accustomed to. Even when quarterback play hasn't been as great as we liked it to been, just this past year when it came to turnovers and getting in bad plays was just something that we just really weren't used to seeing. So I think that was a pretty frustrating part of the past season. But overall, that's why it's difficult when it comes to the quarterback position and being inserted into that at Iowa. Whereas running backs, hey, I mean, for the most part, hey, you're telling you what hole to go to. Pass protection is a little bit more difficult, but I mean, you start to understand it pretty quickly. So yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to be plugged in as a running back than it is as a quarterback at Iowa.
That makes a lot of sense, and really good breakdown of kind of what makes it so important for the quarterback and why we hear that going back, and the difficult nature of picking things up. There's another aspect that very well could be coming. It happened in a number of bowl games this year, and that was the communication aspect that we've seen for almost 30 years now in the NFL, where the OC or the head coach can talk to the quarterback until there's 15 on the play clock. They did it. Everything that I read from every team that was involved in that, absolutely loved it. And having that ability coupled with Tim Lester, not on the field, but up in the booth as an OC, something that I think everyone should. And unfortunately, the old OC was not able to do that after his tirade up in the press box in his first year as the OC and had to go down to the field. That aside, having your offensive coordinator up there, being able to see all those things, LaShawn, you definitely know the difference there. That's got to be a huge aspect. I know there's play callers, head coaches that are play callers that have to do it on the field, but that eye in the sky, being either an offensive coordinator or being the offensive coach that's up there reeling, how important is that? And being able to see kind of the whole field, and how much easier is it to do it upstairs as opposed to down on the field?
Yeah, I think it makes it easier because I can, as an offensive coordinator, I can now make the adjustments on the fly. All right, because again, it's the offensive coordinator, it's my offense, right? We're running the things that I want to run. And if I'm on the field, yeah, I can see a little bit, but I'm basically relying on whoever happens to be in the box, whether it's a offensive analyst, another offensive coach, wherever that happens to be up there, to essentially relay what they're seeing down to me, right? And make it a little bit more challenging to make those adjustments on the fly, because again, they're going to be changing how they operate after the scripted plays. And I think we saw that. I think it really reared its head quite a bit this past season. Like, hey, our scripted plays, we come out and we're looking extremely well. We start off, extremely well on the offensive side of football, but then as the game moved along, it felt like the defenses adjusted very, very quickly, and then we didn't have a plan for it. And I think part of that is just because, again, you're relying on someone else up there in the box to relay those changes and adjustments, to you down on the field, versus being offensive coordinator in the box and making those changes. And as I understand, like, being on the sideline is definitely it's nice and fun to be able to do that. I think it presents additional, like, a challenge for your offensive coordinator being down on the field to be able to make those adjustments. So that's why I like the idea of having the offensive coordinator in the booth. And then if you add in the part where now, like, you have the communications in the helmets, now you don't even have to go through the middleman of the quarterbacks and maybe a receiver coach on the sideline do it signals to your quarterback. Now, hey, you see what they do. You see whatever the situation is, whatever the down and distance. All right, the offensive coordinator's up there in the booth. They see maybe how they reacted, maybe the last play or maybe the last previous drive to that certain situation. Okay, now I can make this quick change, and now I can get the play down to my quarterback quickly. I can get us to the line of scrimmage quickly. Now I allow the quarterback to have more time to, again, do those things that I had just mentioned a few minutes ago. I can ID, the blitzes that the defense is showing. I have time to look at maybe how the safeties are rotating and the defense, and now I can figure out, okay, where I want to go with the football. So having your offensive coordinator in the press box I think is something that should be done, because again, it makes it so much easier for that offensive coordinator to make those in-game adjustments and drive-by-drive adjustments versus, all right, now you kind of have to wait to get into the locker room at halftime to really have that more of an in-depth discussion to look at, maybe how the defense was adjusting. So,
LaShawn, one final thing. Hearing from Kirk, said he's open to change. I thought that was a big takeaway there. But Seth Wallace becoming the assistant head coach. And I don't know what that entails. It doesn't feel like they exactly know what it entails. I mean, there's some easy things. Kirk, he's being pulled a bunch of different directions. And we know that from just everything happening in college athletics. There's a lot on the plate of the CEO and kind of simplifying things there. Do you read it as this is Kirk saying, when my retirement comes, this is my number one choice? Can you read it that way, or is it just that? A new title for a guy that deserves it. Seth Wallace has had a lot of opportunities. Illinois come after him. Minnesota's come after him. Northwestern's come after him to be a defensive coordinator. Is it just that, hey, a guy that we need to keep around and we got to find a way to make that happen?
Yeah, I think it's potentially a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's definitely potentially a little bit of both. Yeah, I mean, Coach Wallace definitely deserves all the promotions because, again, phenomenal coach, has done an extremely good job since he's been at Iowa. I mean, heck, he was there when I was there. Obviously, giving the running backs crap all the time because linebacker coaches, right? I mean, those guys we're always going button heads, so it always made sense. But I mean, he's done a phenomenal job as essentially basically being Coach Parker's right-hand man when it comes to that defense. And I think knowing that he has had a ton of opportunities to go elsewhere. I mean, all the defensive coaches has, but I think with just that his football smarts and his ability as a coach and the way that he's really helped solidify that linebacker group year after year and have been playing at a high level. It makes total sense why he got the promotions and all the raises. Now, when it comes to post Coach Ferentz, I don't know how those talks went. I mean, maybe it was something like, hey, like if that time comes, right? Like you would be the person, right? You'd basically have the first crack at the interviews and whatnot. Basically, be in a position to essentially be handed off, that head coaching job. Maybe almost like how Ohio State a few years back when Urban Meyer retired, right? They kind of just handed it off to Ryan Day. Maybe in a situation like that. But you never really know what was in their mind, and who knows? I could just be talking just to talk at this point. But I definitely think it is significant that they did that, because I feel like that's something that it hasn't been something that they've done. And so I think it was extremely unique to go ahead and make that announcement, and especially adding that title. And it's not something I think that we should just be like brushing aside. But I still think that Coach Ferentz loves coaching, loves football, and I don't anticipating him going away, at least not after this season. But you never know kind of what is going through the minds of Coach Ferentz and the new AD. So,
Final thing on this front, and it pertains to LeVar Woods, who was interviewed for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers special teams job. He did not get the job; it went to somebody else. But the importance of somebody like LeVar. Now, LeVar was not the special teams coordinator when you were there. That was Chris White, but he has obviously elevated things, and just how good they are in returns, in coverage units. And this is a guy, I kind of stumbled across this thought the other day. There's probably not a coach that deals with more people on the football roster than your special teams coordinator, because you need a bunch of different parts, right? So he's dealing with young guys early in their career, those kind of things. Just the importance of LeVar and your special teams coordinator, because he's working short of quarterbacks pretty much with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that, special teams coaches don't get more head coaching jobs. I mean, I get why they don't, but it's just interesting because again, these guys, when it comes to being a head coach, a lot of times, especially if you hire really good coordinators, a lot of times it's you basically essentially being a CEO and helping everyone else, your other assistant coaches, do the best jobs that they can, putting them in positions to succeed. And then as a special teams coach, you're in tune with basically every single situation that pops up during the game. Because again, you got to have the special teams units ready at any given time, whether it's end of half situations. I see you have your third down situations, you have your end of game situations, things like that. Like as a special team coach, you're going to be in tune with all of that. So you're going to have an idea of like, okay, these are the areas that we have success in, and